My birthday wasn't supposed to feel like a warning, but the moment my boss handed me that glass, my favorite drink, the one he always remembered, I knew something was off. It wasn't the color. It wasn't the temperature. It wasn't even the way he smiled, stretched too wide across his face like a man trying to act casual. It was the smell, a faint, unfamiliar bitterness under the sweetness I knew by heart. And when I lifted the glass just an inch too close to my nose, something inside me said, "Don't drink this. Not today. Not from him." I should explain, I'm not paranoid by nature. I'm not dramatic. I'm the guy who always shrugs things off. The guy who stays late to help. The guy who brings donuts on Fridays because nobody else will. I don't make enemies. I don't look for trouble. But trouble had been circling me for weeks. Quiet enough to ignore, persistent enough to feel. A misplaced file. A meeting I forgot to be invited to. A project I'd built for 6 months suddenly reassigned for strategic realignment. Little things. But little things add up. So when my boss, Mark, lifted his own glass and said, "To you, man, our most reliable guy," I smiled back. But my stomach tightened. The office cheered, people clapped, someone whistled. But all I could focus on was the faint chemical twist in the drink he placed in my hand. Maybe I would have ignored it. Maybe I would have forced myself to believe I was imagining it. But then Mark's eyes flicked, not at me, but at my glass. Just half a second. Barely a twitch, but enough. The kind of look a person gives not when they're celebrating you, but when they're checking something. I don't know why I did it. Reflex, instinct, a survival impulse. But when he turned to greet someone behind him, I switched our glasses. Smooth, quick, quiet. When he turned back, I clinked mine against his. "Cheers," I said. His hesitation was so small most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. The tiniest pause before he brought the rim to his lips. The faint tightening at the corners of his mouth. He swallowed, forced a laugh, and the room moved on. Music resumed. People drifted toward the snack table. No one suspected anything, except me. I held my new glass in my hand, barely wetting my lips with it, pretending to drink. The smell was normal now, perfectly normal. Whatever had been wrong wasn't wrong anymore. But Mark wasn't normal. He excused himself 3 minutes later, weaving through the crowd with that same strained smile. One hand touched his stomach, the other braced against a cubicle wall. I watched him disappear around the corner, and just like that, the noise of the office birthday faded. I wasn't hearing the chatter anymore. I wasn't seeing the balloons or the cheap banner someone taped to the wall, crooked. I was replaying the last few weeks, stitching them together like a timeline I should have assembled earlier. The locked cabinet I found slightly open, the email thread I wasn't CC'd on, the sudden check-in meeting he requested about performance alignment, the missing draft contract that only I and Mark had access to, and now a drink that didn't smell right. I didn't want to believe any of it. It felt stupid, overblown. But sometimes the truth doesn't hit like a revelation. Sometimes it taps your shoulder, quietly, patiently, until you finally turn around. I slipped out of the main room, ignoring the calls of coworkers telling me to come take a group picture. Halfway down the hallway, I heard it, the soft thud of something hitting a door, then a strained exhale. When I turned the corner, I saw Mark hunched over the sink in the private break room, gripping the counter so hard his knuckles whitened. His eyes flicked to the doorway the exact second he realized he wasn't alone. "Hey, man," he said too quickly. "Just too much sugar. I'm fine." He wasn't fine. His forehead glistened with sweat. His pupils were slightly uneven. His hand trembled. "You should sit down," I said. "Nah, I'm good. Just long day." But the way he kept clearing his throat, the way he blinked too fast, that wasn't sugar. I knew it, and for the first time, a question I didn't want to think formed in my mind. What exactly was he expecting me to feel right now? He brushed past me, forcing a laugh, waving me off like I was overreacting. Go enjoy your party. Seriously, I'll be back in a few. But he didn't come back. Not for 15 minutes. Not for 20. Not until the assistant manager finally went to check on him. When they both walked out together, he looked calmer, settled, mask back on. But I caught the way he avoided meeting my eyes, and the way she avoided meeting his. Something had happened. Something he didn't want me to know. Something that all started when I switched those glasses. I returned to the party, smiled where I needed to smile, opened the gift card they'd all chipped in for, answered the small talk. But my mind wasn't in the room anymore. It was already crawling through possibilities, through timelines, through motives, through the one question I couldn't shake. What exactly did I stop myself from drinking? Later, when most people left and the office emptied out, I stayed behind to collect my jacket. The room felt colder without the noise. Like everything that had been hiding in the background finally came into focus. My birthday decorations drooped. The half-finished cake sat abandoned. The smell of the drinks lingered in the air. And as I picked up my glass, the original one, the one I refused to finish, I noticed something on the bottom. A thin, uneven residue, barely visible unless you tilted it toward the light. And that moment wasn't an accident. It was the first crack in something much bigger. The residue at the bottom of that glass stayed in my head all night. I took it home with me, literally. I rinsed it, then stopped halfway, stared at the swirl of water, and set it in the sink instead of the dishwasher. My girlfriend texted me happy birthday with 3 exclamation marks and a photo of a cake she'd bought for later. I sent back a smiley, told her work ran late, promised I'd pick up wine on the way. I didn't tell her about the glass, or Mark, or how watching him grip the sink had made my skin crawl. Because how do you say out loud, I think my boss tried to give me something that wasn't just alcohol? You don't. Not when you aren't sure, not when you don't want to sound insane. We ate cake at my kitchen table that night, just the 2 of us. She lit a candle, made me close my eyes, told me to make a wish. I wished for something embarrassingly specific. Clarity. Not money, not promotion, not revenge. Just to know for sure whether I was paranoid or finally paying attention. The next morning, when I walked into the office, the wish felt stupid. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The birthday banner was already gone. The conference room was clean. The sink in the break room was empty. Wiped down. No trace of yesterday except a faint, sticky ring on the counter where the punch bowl had been. Mark was in his office with the door half closed, talking quietly to someone on speaker. His posture was relaxed. No signs of sickness. No sign of anything. If I hadn't seen him gripping that sink, I wouldn't have believed it happened. I dropped my bag by my desk. Chloe, our receptionist, glanced up. "Morning, birthday guy," she said. "Recovering?" "From cake?" I smiled. "Barely." She hesitated. "From the other stuff," she added, quieter. My hand froze on the mouse. "What other stuff?" "You know," she lowered her voice even more. "Mark said you overdid it a little, that you weren't feeling great. I just hope you're okay." There it was, a script, already written. "I had 1 drink," I said carefully. "Didn't even finish it." "Oh." She blinked, surprised. "He said you kind of disappeared, and there was some drama in the back?" I looked at Mark's door. The edge of his shoe was visible under the desk. I could practically feel him listening for reactions. "No drama," I said. "He didn't feel well? I checked on him." Her brows knitted. "Huh, weird." "Yeah, weird." I opened my email. The first message on top was from Mark, sent at 7:42 a.m., time-stamped long before I walked in. 1.1 check-in. Aligning expectations after yesterday. Subject line, neutral. Body, formal. Tone, the kind you use when you're about to put something in a file. "Hey, let's grab 20-30 minutes today to debrief on yesterday and talk about expectations going forward. I want to make sure we're on the same page about conduct and reliability, especially with the upcoming client review." Conduct and reliability. I stared at those words for a long time. My heart didn't even race. It just settled, like it was finally sitting down in the truth. He wasn't cleaning up a misunderstanding. He was building a case. I checked my calendar. He'd already dropped a meeting invite on it for 11 Hout. No room to breathe, no chance for me to define anything first. Preemptive strike, the kind you only send if you think you have the upper hand. I clicked into the shared drive next. It was a habit at this point. I'd been lead on the Northbridge account for 6 months, living inside those folders. Budgets, drafts, change logs. I knew that directory better than my own apartment. So when the main spreadsheet took longer than usual to open, and the change history popped up a different editor's name at the top, it caught my eye. Last, modified, Mark Hansen. 10:21 p.m., 2 hours after I left the office, on my birthday. He didn't have any reason to touch those files without looping me in, not unless he was helping, or adjusting, or rewriting the story. I scrolled through the cells. At first glance, everything looked the same. Numbers, dates, line items. Then in the Revenue Projections tab, halfway down, I saw it. A formula overwritten by a hard number. One mistake. One accident. A minor thing, if a minor thing didn't inflate the total, by almost 40%. My name was at the top of that document. Prepared by G. Miller. Anyone looking at it would see one thing. I'd signed off on numbers that were obviously wrong. Somewhere under the initial fear, anger started to stir. Slow, focused, almost cold. Not rage, not yet. Just the simple realization that somebody had put their hands into my work and left fingerprints all over it. I restored the previous version and printed both copies, the altered one and the original, slid them into my notebook. My hands shook just slightly as the printer spat them out. But it wasn't panic. It was that feeling when something clicks into place, and suddenly, everything that didn't make sense has its own light. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't overthinking. He was setting me up. Around 10:50, I saw Mark step out of his office and straighten his tie. He scanned the room like he always did. Quick, ownership in his eyes, like everything here was his by default. Then he smiled at me. It was the kind of smile that would have fooled me 2 months ago. "You got a minute?" he asked. "We can start early." "Sure," I said, closing my laptop. I slipped my notebook under my arm, the edges of the printed pages pressing into my palm, like a reminder that I wasn't walking in naked. His office smelled like coffee and cologne and something faintly medicinal. He gestured to the chair like we were about to have a coaching session. "First off," he began, leaning back, "happy birthday again. Yesterday was a lot." "For who?" I asked. He laughed like I'd made a joke. "Look, I'm not here to beat you up. We all have off days, but with Northbridge so close to final review, I need you at 100%. The client needs to trust that the guy leading this is stable, reliable, not erratic." He let that last word hang between us like a bad smell. "Erratic?" I repeated. "You ducking out of your own party, getting a little weird in the back, not telling anyone. It's not a great look." He folded his hands. "And then there's the spreadsheet issue." "Which issue?" I kept my voice level. He pulled a printed copy from his folder. "My folder, except not." It was the altered version, the one with the inflated totals. He slid it across the desk like it was damning evidence. "This," he said. "You know I have to take this to finance. It could blow up the whole review if we don't fix it quietly." I caught it, but he sighed. "I have to ask what's going on with you." I looked down at the page, pretending to examine it. My eyes already knew every wrong number. "Can I see the file name?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "The file name. The path. Just so we're aligned on which version you're talking about." He hesitated just a fraction of a second. Then he turned his monitor toward me, jabbing a finger at the top of the screen. "Right there." I read it. Same file. Same path. But the modified bylog in the corner was minimized. Almost closed. Almost. I pointed to it. "You see that?" "See what?" "The last editor field. That's you, isn't it?" He clicked out of it so fast it might as well have burned him. We're not talking about me. We're talking about you letting this kind of error live in your work. The anger inside me stopped being abstract. It shaped itself into something sharper. And then, I said quietly, we're talking about you telling Chloe I had some kind of breakdown yesterday, that I overdid it, that I wasn't feeling well, when you were the one holding on to the sink. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? You heard me. The room went very still. The hum of the air conditioner suddenly felt loud. Outside the glass wall, people moved past with coffee cups, oblivious. In here, it was just the two of us and the ugly, honest thing between us. I checked on you, I went on. You looked like you were about to pass out. 15 minutes later, you're feeding people a story about me being unstable, and the only thing that happened between those two moments was you drinking from a glass you handed me first. For a moment, I thought he might own it. Laugh it off. Say, okay, you got me. And pivot. He was good at pivoting. That's why he'd climbed so fast. But something about me saying it out loud, about naming the thing he thought was invisible, knocked the script out of his hands. That's a serious accusation, he said finally, each word clipped. You might want to rethink how you're framing this before it ends up in HR. Already did, I answered. I opened my notebook and laid the 2 printed spreadsheets on his desk. Original. Altered. Dates. Times. Editors. These are serious facts. He stared at the pages. Jaw tight. Eyes scanning faster than he wanted me to see. And then, for the first time since I'd known him, he didn't have a smooth line ready. No easy recovery. No, let's just fix this and move forward. Just a tight, ugly silence. And then silence. The kind that means something's gone wrong. I picked the papers back up and slid them into my notebook again. I didn't need him to acknowledge anything. Not now. Not here. You wanted to know what's going on with me? I said, standing. What's going on is I've started paying attention, that's all. Sit down, Grant, he ordered. I've got work to do, I replied. I walked out of his office before he could stop me. Chloe watched me answer a call at my desk with a calm I didn't fully feel. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear. That morning, I stopped being the guy who assumed people were on my side just because I was on theirs. And whether Mark realized it yet or not, that was just the beginning. By the next morning, the office felt different. Not colder, not hostile, just awake. Like everyone sensed a shift, but couldn't place it yet. Mark arrived late, unusual for him. His shirt was crisp, his posture rehearsed, but something in his eyes kept flickering, like a man checking his reflection for cracks. He avoided me at first, talking to everyone else with exaggerated ease. Too many jokes, too many smiles, too much team energy. People laughed, but you could feel the tension like static clinging to the edges of every sentence. I spent the morning doing something I'd never done before, retracing every one of his moves in the Northbridge project, step by step, line by line, revision by revision. The deeper I went, the more I realized how many small adjustments he'd already made, nudges in budgets, inconsistencies in dates, accidental duplicates. Nothing massive on its own, but layered together, a pattern, like someone building a trap slowly enough that the target wouldn't notice until the teeth snapped shut. Around noon, Chloe slipped into my cubicle holding a folder against her chest, looking like she wasn't sure if she should even be doing this. Can I talk to you? Sure, I said, closing my laptop. She sat down, leaned close. I don't know what's going on between you and Mark, but he asked me this morning if you seemed off. Off how? You know, off, distracted, forgetful, sloppy. She swallowed. He asked if you'd been drinking at work. I leaned back. There it was, the shape of the plan. He hadn't just expected me to drink that glass. He'd expected me to act like someone who did, someone he could document, someone he could frame. Did you tell him anything? No. She shook her head hard. I said you seemed the same as always, but he didn't look happy about that. Thank you, I said quietly. She hesitated. There's something else. Yesterday, when he left that room looking sick, he said it was the lighting, but he asked for the security footage from that hallway. My pulse clicked into a new rhythm. Did he get it? Not yet. Andre is in charge of footage requests, and he said he'd only release it if HR approved. She lowered her voice. It's like Mark's trying to build a story around something, I don't know what. I did. I just didn't know how far he'd already gotten. After she left, I walked straight to the back office where Andre worked. He was a quiet guy, ex-military, obsessed with order. His desk was stacked with binders, his screens neatly divided into grids of archived camera feeds. You busy? I asked. He glanced at me, then at the screens again. Depends. If you're here for footage, Mark already tried. I'm not, I said. Actually, I'm here because something weird happened yesterday, and I'm trying to make sense of it. He paused. He said something happened with you. Yeah, I said. He's rewriting that part. Andre raised an eyebrow. What actually happened? I told him. Not everything. Just enough. The drink, the switch, the smell, the way Mark looked in the break room. Andre didn't blink, didn't react, just listened with the same stillness he had when watching feeds. Finally he said, You want to know something interesting? Always. The camera that covers that hallway went down yesterday. Just that one. 3 minutes before he walked in. Came back online at 5:42? That's convenient. Or intentional. He clicked into a log file. Someone manually disabled it from an admin panel. I can see the command. Problem is, admin access is limited. To who? IT director, myself, and department leads. He turned his head. Department leads includes Mark. There it was again, the pattern tightening. Can you print that log? I asked. I can. He pressed a key. I shouldn't, but I can. He handed me the printout. At the bottom was a time-stamped entry. User Emma Hansen. Admin command executed. Disable feed. Hallway 3B. It was real. Not suspicion. Not paranoia. Not a bad feeling. A fact. As I walked back to my desk, something settled in my chest. Not fear. Not anger. Something steadier. Something that felt like a blade sliding into alignment. I spent the next 2 hours reviewing timelines, screenshots, and change logs. Everything that didn't add up. Everything he'd tried to bury. When you lay scattered pieces side by side, they stop being confusing. They become obvious. At 3:17 p.m., my moment arrived. Mark stormed out of his office like he'd been stung, waving a printed spreadsheet over his head. Grant, office, now. People looked up. Heads turned, the kind of attention he usually fed on. I followed him in, closing the door behind us. He didn't sit. He paced, shoulders tight. You restored the document, he snapped. Yes. You overrode my corrections. No, I restored the original. He slapped the paper down. These numbers don't match the version you submitted. I didn't submit that version. His jaw flexed. Stop playing games. This is serious. Finance caught inconsistencies. They're reviewing. If this goes where I think it's going exactly where it should. That made him pause. Just long enough for me to pull Andre's log from my folder and lay it beside the spreadsheet. What's this? He asked. Proof. He snatched the paper, read it, blanched. What is this supposed to mean? It means you disabled a camera minutes before you walked into the hallway where you got sick. It also means you accessed my files without telling me. It means the spreadsheet you're trying to pin on me was edited under your login the night of my birthday. It means the story you're building doesn't match the one the system saved. You can't accuse me of... I'm not accusing, I said. I'm verifying. He stared at me, mouth tight, breath shallow. Then the tiniest crack in his voice. You don't know what you're getting into. Oh, I do, I said. And you probably should have chosen someone who didn't know how to check file histories. He slammed a hand on the desk. You think you can walk into HR with this? You think they'll believe some paranoid theory about... They don't have to believe me. I stepped closer, calm, measured. They just have to see the logs and the edits. and the altered file, and the timestamps, and the fact that the version you printed has a manual override tagged to your account. He froze. The room held its breath around him. For the first time, I felt it shift in power. Small, but real, like watching the first stone slip out of someone else's wall. But I wasn't done. Not yet. You tried to erase me quietly, I said. You tried to set me up for the fall. You expected me to drink something and act erratic so you could document it. You expected missing data to look like my incompetence. His face lost color. You don't understand. No, I said. You don't. I leaned in, voice low, steady. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. His eyes flinched, not at my words, but at what they meant. This wasn't over. This was the turning point, and he knew it. I didn't sleep much that night, but it wasn't from fear. It was the kind of clarity that feels like a bright room, too bright to rest in. Every detail of the last weeks replayed itself with new meaning. The missing files, the sudden check-ins, the way Mark kept trying to guide the narrative before anything had even happened. He knew what he was doing. He just never expected me to notice. The next morning I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The air was still, the lights half dimmed, the kind of quiet where every sound feels amplified. I went straight to HR, not to complain, not to accuse, just to report facts. Our HR director, Maria, was a calm woman with the patience of a monk and the memory of a lawyer. She invited me into her office, closed the door, and gestured for me to sit. I laid everything on her desk, the altered file, the original version, the time-stamped logs, Andre's printout, and my own notes. Not opinions, not feelings, just a trail. She read in silence, a long silence. When she finally looked up, her voice was measured. Grant, this is serious. I know. And it's detailed. I know. She tapped the spreadsheet with her pen. These edits weren't subtle. If finance reviewed these before the client saw them, it would have been catastrophic. I know. Is there anything else I should be aware of? I hesitated only for a second. He tried to build a case that I was unstable, that I was drinking at work, that I was unreliable. He asked Chloe to confirm those things. He tried to get hallway footage from the night he got sick. Maria's brows lifted by a fraction. She knew what that implied. More importantly, she knew what it looked like on paper. Do you know why he'd target you specifically? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to choose the truth that mattered, not the one that hurt. Because I lead the Northbridge project, I said, and if the numbers collapsed, someone had to take the fall, and he wasn't going to make it him. She nodded once, slow, controlled, a gesture of understanding and confirmation all at once. Thank you for bringing this forward, Grant. This is exactly the kind of thing we have to investigate immediately. I'm looping in legal and the CFO. You did the right thing. That was all I needed to hear. When I returned to my desk, the office was trickling awake. People laughed near the coffee machine. Someone microwaved oatmeal. Phones started ringing. For a moment, everything felt normal again, stable, solid. Then Mark arrived. His stride was confident. Too confident. Like a man who still believed he was the one controlling the lighting in the room. When he saw me, he offered a curt nod, as if yesterday had been nothing more than a tense discussion. Morning, he said. I looked him in the eye. Morning. He didn't like that. He expected hesitation. He got none. At 10:05 a.m., Maria entered the main floor with the CFO and legal. People looked up from their keyboards. The entire atmosphere froze mid-breath. She walked straight to Mark. Mark, we need to speak with you privately. He blinked. Once. Twice. Confusion cracked through his practiced calm. He glanced at me instinctively, involuntarily, and that was the moment I knew he understood. He wasn't pulling me into an office this time. He was being pulled. They walked him down the hallway, past the cubicles, past the glass conference rooms, into the executive suite. The door closed behind them. The blinds were drawn. A hush spread across the office floor. I returned to my work, not because I wasn't curious, not because I wasn't angry, but because I didn't need to hear what was being said. I already knew the structure of it. 3 hours later, the door opened again. Mark walked out. But the man who walked out wasn't the man who walked in. His face was blank, colorless, his tie slightly loosened, his steps uneven, not from sickness this time, but from realization. He carried a box, a small one. His eyes swept the office, searching for something familiar, something sympathetic, something he could still hold on to. No one looked back, not out of cruelty, but because truth has weight, and that weight had shifted. Even people who didn't know the details could feel the change in the air, like a storm passing without thunder. When his gaze reached me, he stopped, just for a second. He didn't speak. I didn't move. There was nothing to say. He turned away, walked toward the elevator, and disappeared behind the closing doors. The office exhaled. Around 3 p.m., Maria called me into her office again. She wasn't smiling, but there was something gentler in her expression. "We're promoting you into the interim project lead role for Northbridge," she said, "pending final review. Considering your documentation and consistency, I expect that review will go smoothly." I nodded slowly, absorbing it. "This isn't just a temporary patch," she continued. "You've shown a level of diligence we need, and integrity. We want you leading this team." It should have felt triumphant, but instead it felt right, equal, balanced, like an equation finally resolving to zero. After work, I didn't go out to celebrate. I didn't call friends. I didn't even tell my girlfriend right away. I drove home with the windows cracked, the cool air brushing against my arms, the city moving around me like a current I was no longer swimming against. At home, I put my keys on the counter, took off my shoes, walked to the sink where yesterday's glass still sat, waiting. I picked it up, held it under the light, and for the first time, I wasn't trying to decode it. The residue didn't matter anymore. The smell didn't matter. Whatever was in it, whatever he planned, whatever story he tried to build around me, none of it had a place in my future anymore. I rinsed the glass, watched the water wash the last trace of it away, not symbolic, just final. Later that evening, I finally told my girlfriend everything. Not dramatically, not like a confession, just as a story that was over now. She listened without interrupting, then took my hand and said, "Good. I'm glad you didn't stay quiet." I realized something as she said it. Silence and calm are not the same thing. Silence was the thing Mark wanted for me. Calm was the thing he never expected me to reach. When I went to bed, the house felt different. Not emptier, not fuller, just balanced, like someone had re-leveled the foundation under it. And in that quiet, in that steady air, I finally felt it. Peace isn't the absence of storms. It's the moment you stop letting someone else hold the umbrella.